This is one of the most talked about unsolved crimes in the world right now, and no one can figure out who committed this horrible crime. But we know who didn't commit it, because there was only one suspect, and he was never even at the scene of the crime. This man sitting here right now, the guy who has done nothing wrong, is actually innocent. He's not the killer. And the police have made a massive mistake because they've spent years trying to find the man in the video, when in reality all of their time and energy should have been focused on the man sitting here. In today's video, we will explore the case files and forensic evidence to reveal exactly why this man is innocent and to expose the true killer. In April 2012, four friends, Justin, Brandon, David, and Jacob, left their homes in Nebraska to head to a local pizzeria. The boys had been planning this night out for weeks. They wanted to celebrate their recent high school graduation together by getting some pizza and watching a movie. It was going to be a night just like any other, and none of them could have predicted what would happen next. The four friends went to separate cars. Jacob drove a black SUV, while Justin drove a pickup truck with his two best friends, Brandon and David, inside. The three boys got to the restaurant first and sat outside waiting for Jacob. While they were waiting, surveillance footage shows a black SUV drive past the pizzeria, slowing down and then turning around in the middle of the road. The boys watched as the same black SUV returned and parked behind them. Jacob came out of the restaurant holding two pizzas, walked over to the driver's side window of the car and opened it. The boys thought it was strange that Jacob was talking to someone inside the car, but they waved it off as just being Jacob being Jacob. He was always so friendly with everyone, and the boys assumed that he was just making a new friend. But minutes later, the boys heard gunshots. They turned toward the noise and saw the black SUV speeding away. At first, the boys thought it was just a car backfiring. But when they looked toward the direction that the SUV had sped off in, they saw Jacob slumped over in his seat with blood trickling down his mouth. His two pizzas lay abandoned on the floor beside him. Police arrived at the scene to find out what had happened. First on the scene was Officer Angela Sands, who was the first to discover Jacob lying dead in his vehicle. She could see Jacob's lifeless body slumped over the steering wheel, and what appeared to be blood coming from his mouth. Sand noticed a single bullet hole on the windshield and another in the front passenger door, and that's when she discovered Jacob wasn't breathing and had no pulse. As soon as paramedics arrived, they pronounced Jacob dead at the scene. The coroner would later determine that Jacob died instantly from a gunshot wound to the head. Upon arriving at the scene, detectives knew this was no ordinary murder. There were no signs of robbery or struggle. Jacob's wallet, phone, and other belongings were all still in the car. Furthermore, Jacob's vehicle was in a public parking lot, meaning there were many people and businesses surrounding him. But despite all this, the person or persons responsible for his death had gotten away. The police had one piece of surveillance footage from the Pizza Hut parking lot, which showed Jacob's interaction with the occupants of the black SUV. Unfortunately, the grainy footage did not show the shooter clearly. However, there was one thing that stood out to the police. The front license plate of the SUV was visible, and it had been stolen from a dealership in Omaha a week prior. After running the plate, the police found that the SUV was registered to Joseph White Jr., a 22-year-old man living in Omaha. When the police searched White's house, they didn't find any weapons or Jacob's possessions. But what they did find was very interesting. While searching the house, an officer noticed a pair of men's size 13 work boots in the bedroom closet. These work boots were a rare pair. They were custom-made and couldn't be purchased in stores. They could only be ordered online. The officer knew immediately that these were the same boots seen in the surveillance footage from the Pizza Hut. Police also found a notebook where they discovered White's handwriting. A few pages inside, they found something that shocked them. Written in White's handwriting was the phrase, "men's size 13 custom work boots." The officer immediately recognized this phrase as the same description of the boots found in the closet. But how could this be a coincidence? Why would White write down the exact description of his own boots? Unless, of course, he knew the police were looking for him. As the investigation continued, the police learned that Jacob had been shot and killed in cold blood. The killer had planned this murder and had waited in the parking lot for Jacob to arrive. All of this meant only one thing. The police believed Joseph White Jr. was the killer. They felt confident in their belief because they had so much evidence against him. such as the stolen license plate on the SUV, the matching boots, and because he was the only other person present at the scene. With all this evidence against him, White was arrested and charged with murder. He was sent to jail without bail, but the problem was the police didn't have enough evidence to prosecute White. They needed proof that White was involved in Jacob's murder. To get this evidence, they decided to use White's cell phone records. They tracked his location to see if he was at the Pizza Hut during the murder, and what they found was shocking. The police discovered that White was at a motel nearly 60 miles away at the time of the murder. Because of this, White's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss the charges against him. The judge overseeing the case granted the motion, and White was released from jail. As you can imagine, Jacob's family and friends were furious when they heard the news. How could the police make such a big mistake? How could they arrest an innocent man? Everyone was confused. No one understood what was happening. To this day, Jacob's murder remains unsolved. The police still don't know who the killer is or why they killed Jacob. They never found the murder weapon. They never found any evidence linking anyone else to the crime. And after more than 10 years, they still don't know what happened. What makes this story the most bizarre is that the police are convinced that Joseph White Jr. is guilty. Even though they have zero evidence linking him to the crime, they're still convinced that he did it. But why? Well, let's take a closer look at the evidence and we'll find out. First, we need to take a look at the surveillance footage. You may think that it's inconclusive, that it doesn't show anything definitive. But what if I told you that it does? Look closely at the driver. You see that tattoo on his neck? Well, so do the police. They believe that this tattoo is a spider web, the same tattoo that Joseph White Jr. has on his neck. But wait, it gets crazier. If we pull up a mugshot of Joseph White Jr., you can see that he has a bandage on his neck. This proves that White was recently injured, that he was recently in an accident. So if we go back to the surveillance footage, do you notice anything? White is wearing a long-sleeve shirt. Why would he wear a long-sleeve shirt on such a hot day? Why would he cover up his tattoo? Because he's ashamed of it. Because he knows the police are looking for him and he doesn't want them to identify him. But what about the boots? Is there a way that we can prove that they were planted? Absolutely. Remember, the boots were never found in White's house. They were found in a closet in the house that he was renting from his grandmother. This means that the police didn't have probable cause to search the boots, which means that everything that came from those boots, including the ballistic evidence, is inadmissible in court. Furthermore, the police never took these boots to the crime lab. They never examined them thoroughly. Instead, they only looked at the outside of the boots. Never once did they look on the inside. But if we cut open these boots, what would we find? The answer is simple. We would find ballistics that don't match Jacob's murder. We would find dirt and grass, meaning that these boots were worn outside. But Jacob was shot in an urban area. If the police did their job and investigated these boots, they would have cleared White's name years ago. But they didn't. And now Jacob's killer is still walking free. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about this case, I suggest reading through the case files. You'll learn a lot more, and you might even be able to find some new evidence. Just remember, this man is innocent. He didn't kill Jacob. I hope we can solve this case once and for all.